If you figure out how to stick the butterfly needle in your
My picture leaves the go back to my picture.
Okay, guys. Thanks for braving the balmy weather.
Did I not? Got one racist guy.
You know, yesterday I saw my friend, he was walking down the street. He had a book that was 9 inches thick. I said, why are you reading that long book? He said, well, it's a long story. Huh? See what you know. All right, now guys, I'm going to tell anybody here try out for the Collins Got Talent show? Did anybody try out?
Oh yeah.
You may have missed out because I'm going to be part of the support staff for that thing. I could have put in good work now. Okay, here we go. Here's a leadership camp thing. Now, I heard from some people say that you couldn't register for it anymore. I have no idea. If I were you and you were really interested in going to it, I would go to, because it's a great opportunity. It looks great on your college applications and stuff. And once you are in college, if you want to be like an RA or work with them, it would be a really good thing. So I'd go over to the Office of Student Engagement, which is at F122. Basically, you're going to be at the Prospero Center on Lake Texoma for a day of team building, leadership exercises, yada yada, games, fun, all that stuff. All right, Monday is Halloween. If you want to get in the costume contest, it's going to be up at the Plano campus atrium at noon. The next day, they're having a retro arcade tournament. Can't do it because of time, can't do it because of time. If you want, can't do it because of time. That's what I'm going to be helping with. Distracted driver education. That's from 11 to 1 on Tuesday the 8th. Intramural spades, Thanksgiving feast up in McKinney. Can't do that because of time. Don't worry about that one. Can't do it because of time. World Cup watching party. If you want to go to just catch a little bit of the game of the USA versus Wales, USA will probably get looked up on just because Wales has historically had a much longer experience. Intramural dominoes. Something that might be fun if you're over 17 is the mechanical bull riding. That's going to be on Monday the 28th. Then on Tuesday, there's just going to be pancakes and PJs. If you want to go up and enjoy that. There we go. All right. So, beginning with lecture, we went ahead and got all the way up to the very last slide about Thomas Jefferson and his lineage with some groups. And basically we talked about the advancement of some groups, like the Cherokees and Creeks had begun to centralize their governments, and indeed they had privately owned plantations and all that, like Alexander McGallivray, the Creeks, who basically brilliantly played French, Spanish, English, and American interests off each other to help him for his tribe. And by the way, the Creeks were an incredibly powerful military impediment to American expansion into the southeast until they were finally, their power was cut down by Andrew Jackson. The Cherokee elite did the same thing by 1794. Handsome Lake of the Iroquois wanted his tribal children to go to European schools, learn European farming techniques, but he warned them about witchcraft as well as alcohol. Now basically, because they didn't want to cause trouble, a lot of the government bodies encouraged American Indians to move further west. And this whole idea of segregating Native Americans from everybody else kind of became the basis of governmental policy for the remainder of that century. Oh, and by the way, if anybody's interested, the movie Till, about Emmett Till's mom, is going to start playing, I think, today at the Alamo Draft House in Richardson. Emmett Till was a young African-American boy who was lynched, and his mom kept up the fight for justice, and that film is about her and her fight. Ready? Everybody got it? But you just want to hear more share, I know. All right, what then, you ask, do we have to know for our quiz? Well then, I shall tell you. Things that you need to go over is, just like I asked you to know about Hamilton's plan for the U.S., know what Thomas Jefferson's plan for the United States was. And for this, as president, for this you might want to look at not only the Louisiana Purchase, but also look at what he was doing with his Secretary of the Treasury, Albert Gallatin. All right? The next question about the Barbary, guys, the next question is a tricky one. No big generalities about the Barbary pirates. And I might try to help you out a little bit more on quiz day with that one, because that's a tough, tricky one. Because so many of the answers is like, well, that's true. No, it's not. Well, it could be. Well, it might, but it's not. Oh. All right, know about the Louisiana Purchase. No generalities about that. Not only, why was it a great opportunity, know why it may have been problematic, and know how that might have affected life in the East. That we have all this new land in the West. How might that have affected what was going on in the eastern part of the U.S.? Sade? Sade. Back where we started. Okay. Increasing conflict and war. All right, this is a period from 1805 to 1815. Basically, we're going to be discussing Thomas Jefferson's second administration, as well as the next president, Madison. Okay, we're probably going to get through this in 2 days, because it's not a very long lecture, which means that you're going to have a quiz, bam, on Monday, bam, probably a quiz on Tuesday. If not, then you're going to be having quiz Monday, quiz Wednesday, all right? Which is good. And you're not going to have a quiz like after you get back from, I don't think, if we're still dealing with the extra quizzes, because we've got like 3 maybe weeks before you all go off. No, you've only got 2 weeks before you all go off on Thanksgiving holidays. Right? I don't know. We'll get to that when we get to it. Troubling currents in Jefferson's America. Alright guys, even though we tried to make it seem like everything was one big happy for a lot of Americans under Thomas Jefferson's first administration, it's not the case. You had a lot of emerging factions in American politics, like the Federalists in the Northeast began to organize under Timothy Pickering, who was a Federalist leader, who said basically, who got together with a group called the Essex Junto. Now that sounds like it's a big four, but basically a junto is a club of guys. When you get together with your buds, go out drinking, talk smack, that's what a junto is. And basically they believed that their interests could no longer succeed underneath the Republican Democrats and the United States of America. He said the people of the East cannot reconcile their habits, views and interests with those of the South and the West. And they threatened secession. We're getting out of this, baby. Now, guys, you expect that from the other political party. What you don't expect is when it's coming from your own political party. The Republican Democrats are also divided. Basically, the leader of the opposition was John Randolph of Virginia, that was opposed to the expansion of the government's power underneath Jefferson and his proposed solution to the Yazoo controversy. Now, what was the Yazoo controversy? It had to do with the Yazoo River, which was a split off of the Mississippi. Anyway, these 4 different private companies had gotten together to try to buy this land from Georgia. And Georgia goes ahead, well, Georgia and Tennessee, go ahead and they plan to sell this thing at way under market value, just to get the money. And John Randolph was hacked about that, and he said, you gotta do something about this. And Thomas Jefferson said, hey, look, it's a state deal. That's state lands. I'm the federal government. We can't do anything about it. Well, not only that, but John Randolph also found out that Thomas Jefferson had gone to Spain and said, hey, you know, we just made this huge deal with France, expanding our country, well, you're number one. He went to France and said, hey, don't tell anybody, but we'll give you $2 million for Florida. Don't tell anybody, but we'll give you $2 million for Florida. And when, of course, Randolph found that out, he was like, oh, no, you didn't. Put away the phones, please. Oh, and the name of his group was the Tertium Quid. Now, the Tertium Quid, that might sound like it's a big foreboding thing. Basically, all that means, Tertium Quid in Latin means the third thing. Then we got good old Burr. Well, Burr had pretty much caused the Republican Democrats a lot of discomfort. He had, times for Burr hadn't been favorable ever since he refused to step down and let Jefferson win the election of 1800. Jefferson didn't call on him much when he was vice president. And by 1804, he totally dropped him from the ticket. So, Burr goes to the Essex Junto, and he wanted to be the governor of New York, and he goes and promises the members of the Essex Junto that if he gets elected, that he'll go ahead and he'll lead them and New York away from the United States of America. He'll lead the secession. This, of course, made Alexander Hamilton furious, where he publicly proclaimed Burr a dangerous man and one who not be trusted with the reins of government. Burr loses the election, and of course, who do you think Burr is going to blame? Who's Burr going to blame? Because, you know, Hamilton says, he's a madman, shouldn't trust him, he loses, so who's he going to blame? Because it can't be his fault. It's Hamilton. He goes to Hamilton and he says, you take back that stuff. And you know, Hamilton had written this. Now this is a great lecture. Guys, whenever you get married, like I can go tell you you're a son of a gun and why I'm so mad at you, but never write it down and send it to you as a note. Why?
Evidence.
Huh?
Evidence.
Words on paper are permanent. I might call him a son of a gun. He's going to forget it by the end of the day. But if he has a letter that he can keep in his wallet, that no good Galloway called me a son of a gun. Well, anyway, Burr had written this down. Hamilton had written it down. All of his friends said, man, just take it back. And by this time, Hamilton, you know, his party is out of favor. He's kind of broke. All he has really is his honor. And he says, look, I'll tell him I'm sorry if it hurt his feelings, but I'm not going to take back what I said. Well, Alexander Hamilton then challenges him to a duel, and Hamilton accepts. And they meet at Weehawken, New Jersey, with their pistols. They count off their paces. Come on. There we go. They count off their paces. They both turn around. Burr tries to fire his gun, and it doesn't work. Meaning that now Alexander Hamilton can take all the time he wants to aim at Burr and fire, making sure he's got a great shot. Instead, Alexander Hamilton raises his gun into the air and discharges his weapon. This way, both men met at the field of honor, both men tried, and now they can walk away. Well, see, he saved Burr's life willingly. Is Burr grateful for this? No, it makes him madder than a hornet. And he goes and he grabs the second. At every duel, you have either second, which is someone that stands in for you, should you fall and he wants to continue, or a second weapon, should something happen to the first weapon. Anyway, he grabs the second pistol, aims it at Hamilton, fires, and hits him. And man, it's a gut wound. It is a bloody wound that basically Hamilton is able to endure for 36 hours, basically cut apart his liver. He's able to live for 36 hours before he dies in total and abject agony. And guys, in that 36 hours, Hamilton goes from this, he's kind of a mean old man, to, oh my gosh, he's a hero. And Burr is on the run because everybody's mad at him. Now, he didn't do anything to break the law or anything like that, but he runs away. He gets all the way down to while hiding out, he runs into General James Wilkinson, that guy who had sent up Zebulon Pike and plotted to take Texas, New Mexico, and California to form their own republic. Basically he says, hey, that sounds like a great idea. When Wilkinson's plans were revealed, he's in Florida, he's captured, and they said, how dare you want to take what was America? And he says, oh, it wasn't my plan. Guess who he blames it on? It's not me, it's Burr. Because Burr was with him, and he knew how incredibly electrifying Burr's actions had been. Oh, it wasn't my idea, it was that guy Burr. So then they were going to go after Burr. They promised everybody who provided state's evidence against Burr that they would be found not guilty. They have basically a fixed court. His trial goes on, and he's found not guilty because he didn't do the crime. Even though they were planning to take away Texas, New Mexico, and California, all of which were owned by Spain, that never happened. So he's not really guilty of anything. Meanwhile, things in Europe are going more and more towards war. Napoleon is on the war trail. Well, not at the beginning. At the beginning, everybody's peaceful because they're building up their weapons. Needless to say, because there's that break of peace, while they're building up their weapons, this peace is very costly for America. Why? Why would peace in America be costly? I mean, we give everybody food, and we get imported industrial goods. Why would peace be bad for America? Why aren't they buying our food?
Because they can do it themselves now?
Yeah, because they're growing it themselves. They're at peace. Indeed, American exports fell from 93 million to 72 million the first year of peace. The second year it fell down to 56 million. But then, all of a sudden, war breaks out again, which is amazing for America. American exports grew by 65%. Indeed, not only did we have regular exports, we also had re-exports, where basically they would send to America, if you wanted to make a rifle, it was made out of the lock or the firing mechanism, the stock or the wooden piece that the lock went on, as well as the barrel and the barrel. So over here, they'd send us the pre-manufactured goods, we'd put them together and ship them back. Kind of like today, that's what happens to a lot of American cars. They might be built up here, they're shipped down to Mexico or up to Canada, they're reassembled until just a certain point, sent back here to America, and final assembly is put on, and it's sold as an American car. Sure. I remember. Try to do that before class. That's all right. It was a rainy day. We had other things on our minds. Indeed, what had been $14 million worth of goods back in 1803 jumped up to 42.1 million goods by 1807. Now guys, remember, under Jefferson our policy had been, we're trading food, we're trading to everybody, we're going to be everybody's friend. Well, what's the problem with being everybody's friend? The friend of my enemy is my enemy. Which kind of, do any of you guys use Facebook? Okay, so I have a question. Why can't we have in Facebook, because you can be friends with somebody, why can't you be enemies with somebody? Because then if you were Facebook enemies with somebody, would the Facebook enemy of my Facebook enemy automatically become my Facebook friend? Just a question. Something to think about. Meanwhile, guys, we're trying to be neutral. We're trading with both England as well as France. Those are the two big fighting countries. Okay? And not everybody likes the fact that we're doing that. England, they start to seize British sailors on American vessels. As many as 8,000 from 1803 to 1817. And by the way, guys, my way back, my Alexander DeWitt Galloway, he was born in Scotland. So even though he'd come to America, he'd been an American citizen, he was a merchant, so when they stopped that vessel, he was British. He gets taken off. And that happened to a lot of American citizens that had come from the home countries. France then uses the Berlin Decree that barred neutral ships from landing at French ports if they've been in English ports. So you think, oh well, okay, the Berlin Decree says you have to land in a French port first. That's what we'll do. We'll land, sell whatever we want to France, then we'll go up to England, then we'll come back home. Well, Britain changes that with their orders in council that require neutral ships going to Europe to first pay a tax at an English port. Meaning, we have to choose either France or Britain. Now, if today isn't a day for Pink Floyd, I don't know what it is. It's Pink Floyd. Right, bang. Roger Waters. Wrote most of the lyrics to this in our high school. That's where you're all now, by the way. FYI. Ready to go to the next one? Then, efforts by the Europeans to enforce their policies led to incredible tension with the United States. Like the British ship Leopard fired on the Chesapeake and seized American sailors while we were in our territorial waters. Basically, everything 22 miles off our coast is America. There's only one state where 22 miles off that state, it's not just America, but it's that state's waters. No other state has that. Does anybody know what state that is? And we actually went all the way to the Supreme Court to prove that that state owned that land. Starts with a T. Tennessee, but no. Texas, yeehaw! Now wait a minute, guys, why is it so important that Texas owned the land 22 miles off its shore? Anybody here been to the Texas coast and the Gulf of Mexico, all that? Galveston? Nobody? Well, if you go down there, what do you see off in the distance? Jutting out of the water. Oil rigs. Who owns all the oil in Texas? Texas. Oh, and by the way, I didn't tell you guys, I'm so glad I know that this weekend Texas isn't going to lose. We're not playing, but we're not going to lose, so that'll be a great game. Anyway, they're inside our territorial waters on the 22nd of June. They opened fire on the Chesapeake, and the Chesapeake is like, what are you doing? We're in our waters. So they kept going. They didn't stop. The Leopard fires on them again, damaging their sails. It wounded 18 of the sailors, including the captain, damaging the ship severely. Then they proceed to add insult to injury by taking off 4 sailors, saying, hey, these guys are British. Then France passes the Milan Decree, which announced it would seize neutral vessels that traded with England or that had been boarded by English enforcement parties. So Jefferson, who doesn't want to get into a war because he knows it's going to be insane, we can't win another war against Europeans, says, all right, guys, you know what? Tell you what, we're not going to trade with any of you. And he basically puts everybody on an embargo. Forget you guys. See you later. Now, guys, that might seem like, oh my God, that's so cool. He chose peace. Well, guys, what's the only problem with doing the right thing? Is that it costs. You know, your friends call up, hey, let's go and do this fun thing. Oh, I can't do it, man. I got a game tomorrow, or I can't do it. No, but it's going to be really fun. And that girl you like is going to be there. Oh, man. No, come on, man. No, I can't. Crisis in the nation. You're not going to leave anything today. You haven't put anything back there. Ready for the next slide? The Depression of 1808. All right, this embargo caused a severe depression. Indeed, the critics call it the dambargo. Spelling it backwards. Our shipping fell from $109 million worth of goods down to only $22 million. In the Northeast, like in New York City, 30,000 sailors were laid off of their jobs, 120 businesses go bankrupt, and 1,200 New Yorkers are in prison for debt. Some people also start to spell the embargo, oh grab me, to describe what it was doing to their wealth. In the South, agricultural exports also went down sharply. Tobacco prices fell from $6.75 to $3.25 per hundredweight. Cotton fell from 21 cents to 13 cents a pound. Western foodstuffs, meanwhile, were 16% lower than what they had been more than a decade prior, back in 1793. Meanwhile, the cost of all consumer goods and textiles went up by as much as between 11 to 20%. So everything sucks if you want to obey the law. If, however, you wanted to break the law, well, what you do is you take your merchant vessel, you go down to Charleston, you buy your cotton or rice. If you're in South Carolina, you'd buy your rice at a 40% discount because they were doing anything to try to sell it. And of course, the harbor masters, nobody was enforcing it because they wanted to see people continuing to work. and you'd sail over to London. If you made it safely, you basically, and he came out and he told the Native Americans that, hey, all you have to do is return to the ways of old, and God is going to give back the land to you. And so, of course, all the Native Americans were excited. They started to gather. And at first he's preaching nonviolence. And basically all these dispossessed Native Americans start to meet at a place called Prophetstown. And, you know, prophets saying, hey, nonviolent, going to go back to the ways of old, everything's going to be hunky-dory. Then along comes the son of a Pawnee chief. This is the guy who saw his parents burned alive in a canoe by the American soldiers. So he ain't got no love for America. And he excelled at military organization. And so even though they're preaching peace, he's there to kind of make sure that harassment and everything goes on with the encroaching Americans. And of course, because the Americans are shocked at how good he is, they start blaming that these guys are British Indian agents. Sure. Now, because they're saying all of this is being provoked by the British, because the Indians couldn't be this smart to be attacking us like this, they start to ask for a war with Britain. And they think it's good because Britain's fighting France. Britain is fighting for its life against France. And if we went to war, now remember, these are the new Republican Democrat representatives who've gone in. So they're kind of green behind the ears, wet behind the ears. They want war. They think, hey, if we go to war, we're going to be able to break up the emerging Indian confederations. We're going to be able to seize Canada. We're going to be able to secure American control of the Northwest. And if it hadn't been for England impressing all our sailors, we wouldn't even have the Depression like we're going through right now economically. Now, guys, was the Depression only England's fault? Was the Depression only England's fault? Who else was attacking our vessels? Starts with an F. The French, les Français. But we like the French. Kind of like, guys, remember 9/11? Most of the hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. But we like them. Everything's cool. Ready for the next slide? So Madison, we're having a presidential election through the middle of this thing. Madison wins the presidency, but just because he wins doesn't mean everything's one big happy. He, of course, had served in the Revolution. He won a Virginia delegate to the Constitutional Convention. The Federalists were able actually to get a lot of support because people did not like the embargo. Some of the Southern Republicans, like the Tertium Quids, tried to nominate James Monroe. Meanwhile, Northeastern Republican Democrats, they tried to elect George Clinton because of the embargo. And basically a lot, you go into the bathroom? No. Okay. So basically, a lot of the strength had been diminished. That's what I told you last time. And like I told you, the new Republican Democrats were basically war hawks. They didn't want this moderate approach. They wanted immediately to go to war. So in 1811, Madison suspended trade to try to placate them. And now we're actually going to enforce the embargo on the British. Everybody got it? But basically events out west kind of prevent this. Basically Tecumseh and Governor William Henry Harrison, who was the territorial governor of Indiana, they get together to try to work out a treaty. It goes to a stalemate. After the treaty negotiations break down, Tecumseh says, I'm leaving to go talk. Well, actually, he left. William Henry Harrison left. Basically, Tecumseh tells the prophet, hey, I'm going down to try to get us allies because this ain't looking good. He leaves to go talk to the Creeks about building up an Indian confederation and attacking America. While he's gone, the Henry Harrison brings in the National Guard. So there's an intensification on both sides. Basically, prophet doesn't know what to do. All of his followers are saying, hey, look, this is just what God promised, because we went back to the ways of old, just like you said. God was going to give us back our land, but all we have to do is fight this enemy. Because it made total sense to them. They launched the attack at the Battle of Tippecanoe. At first, they actually beat the American lines back. William Henry Harrison is able to lead a counterattack, and he's able to win victory. And he looks around at all the bodies, and he can't find Tecumseh. And he knows that Tecumseh is the smart guy. So how does he paint this thing? He paints this whole thing as an attack by the British. And look at what, because Tecumseh and the prophet were Indian agents, British Indian agents. So basically this is Britain attacking us. So it gets back to Congress. Congress takes a vote and they declare for war on Britain. The nation at war. All right, guys, just like always, the Americans are cocky, confident, and they think they're going to win this thing easy. For us, it starts with a three-pronged attack into Canada, where we totally think we're going to be able to win this thing. Now, guys, most of the people that are living up in Canada that are English are actually Americans, that they remain loyal to the British during the Revolutionary War. And they have no love for their American cousins. We launched a three-pronged attack. As you can see, one of them went in. We're able to even though we captured York, we're not able to totally get it. So we set it on fire, which was their provincial capital. All these attacks are sent back. With the Native Americans, though, we attacked them, and the raids that we had against the Native American villages were successful. Ready for the next slide? Meanwhile, in the Naval War, this is up on the Great Lakes. America scored victories on Lake Erie. And what's really cool is that because of the water and because of the conditions of the lake, a lot of those shipwrecks are incredibly well preserved. So you still have people that can go scuba diving around them. They don't have, you can't really go and swimming around the decks because people died there, so it's kind of considered not right. And because America had such a small navy, one of the things it did was it said, hey, if you want to be a pirate, in other words, if you've got a merchant vessel, you want to put cannons on it, you capture some British ships, you get your percentage of that prize. So a lot of Americans did that. So everything's looking great. But then as soon as we start getting into the election of 1812, all of a sudden misgivings about the war are present. I mean, Madison wins, but barely. The Republican strength in Congress is Republican Democrat. Strength in Congress is diminished. The Federalists, they supported DeWitt Clinton, a Northeastern Republican opposed to the war. In the North, both sides kind of, everybody got this? Like I told you, we win naval victories on Lake Erie, but in the South, the Creek Nation, under the organization of Tecumseh, basically comes and whoops butt. Okay? Totally wiping out 550 pioneer families at Fort Mims. And the reason why they're called the Red Stick faction is because Tecumseh had gone down there and he had a whole thing of red sticks. And he said, hey, you want to be with me on the attack on the Americans? That tribe says yes. So I give him 30 red sticks. And I said, on the day you take away that last stick, be at Fort Mims, and we attack it that next day. I walked 3 days over to this tribe. You want to be with me on attack in Fort Mims? Fort Mims. She says yes. So I give her 27 sticks. So they're both going to be attacking on the same day. I go 3 days to you. Hey, do you want to? She says, yeah. So I give you, what, 24 sticks? And so on. So guys, this is a huge coordinated attack on Fort Mims. Out of the 550 pioneer families, let's say each of them had 5, because that's an easy number. What's 5 times, what did I say, 550? Yeah. What's 5 times 550? Any math guys out there?
2,750.
2,750. Out of 2,750, only 36 people were able to escape. All the rest were killed. Now, as you can guess, this causes retaliatory strikes where the state guards of Tennessee and Georgia rise up against them. England, meanwhile, they seize control of the Atlantic with the American ships blockaded in ports, because now they are making sure nothing gets out. They're putting the squeeze on us. And that endeth the lesson.
What do I feel like?
Why did I do that?
The Friday one?
I didn't even see you.
Those are all due by 4:30.
Well, it's not actually.
That's
Like, they have to set it.
And then what time do you think it's like
It's Saturday morning at 6 a.m.
Oh, okay. So I don't know. You're actually up at 6 a.m.
Sometimes.
Bro, I would have I would whatever. So I'd never be a teacher. Imagine like sitting with your family trying to enjoy topic of great people. Imagine walking